up, friends? Welcome back to my channel. I hope you all are doing well. Today I'm going to be doing a review and 3 looks with the new BYREDO Mineralscapes palette. I know a lot of you guys are very excited about this palette. It took quite a while for me to get my hands on this palette. I'm going to be doing swatches, giving you all of my honest thoughts, and also creating 3 looks for you today to help you kind of figure out how to use these shades, how to navigate the colors. So if you want to hang out with me today and hear all of my thoughts about the Mineralscapes palette from BYREDO, then keep watching. And by the way, if you are new here, hi, welcome. My name is Sophia, and this is my channel all about luxury beauty, fashion, and lifestyle. I review a lot of new luxury beauty here on my channel, so if that is your jam, hit that subscribe button to join our fam. We would love to have you. I assure you, this is not my usual setting. I'm usually at home in my filming studio. Very different lighting, very different vibe. I'm actually visiting my parents for Easter and also for Mother's Day, so there's a little bit of a different setting here. This is my sister's old bedroom turned into my mom's art studio now that she's retired. So sorry about the surroundings, guys, but I assure you this review is going to be good. I have 3 looks to show you today. I'm actually going to do this review a little bit different than I normally do. We're going to start off with the swatches, and then I'm going to give you guys my thoughts about the palette, the pros, the cons, who I think it is for. Then I'm going to dedicate the rest of the review to the demos because I have 3 demos for you guys today, and it is going to take up quite a bit of time in this video. Timestamps will be down below in case you want to skip ahead. So with that, let's get into it. Let's kick things off with some daylight close-ups of this palette. On the BYREDO website, this is described as an 18-pan palette inspired by the coloration and materiality of BYREDO's native Sweden and the natural rural landscape that exerts its pull. This is almost like the cool tone sister to the Remembrance palette that BYREDO launched last year. Same format, pretty much same packaging, 18 shades, same formula, except this one is going to be much cooler in tone. So if you like cool tone neutrals with some pops of color, which I will show you how to use those in each of the 3 demos today, then I think you are going to be in luck. This might be a palette that you want to take a look at. The component here is basically the same as the Kalahari, the Prismic palette, and the Remembrance palette that came before. It's pretty much the same, except they just changed like the little sticker on the front. It's made of a pretty substantial plastic. I wouldn't say it's like the greatest packaging ever, but it does look very sleek, very modern, very futuristic. Mine is dirty. It's very prone to fingerprints, of course. And I definitely appreciate the more kind of simplistic and modern design to the last one. The one last year, the Remembrance palette, had like that creepy goddess on it. And many of you guys know I didn't really like the creepy goddess. We are friends now, but I will say I do appreciate this design a little bit more. Next, I'm going to show you the swatches. We're going to go through all 18 shades in this palette. I'm not going to swatch the shades in the order that they are placed, however. I'm going to do it by color story. I feel like, especially with these larger palettes, sometimes having this many colors can feel a little bit overwhelming, but at least for me, in my head, if I can kind of group them either by finish or maybe by color family, it helps me kind of approach the looks a little bit more easily, and also kind of helps me understand the differences, the very subtle differences between, let's say, you know, these 2 shades or these 2 shades or these 2 shades. So I'm going to show you the swatches grouped by color family. The first set of swatches that I have here are all of these soft golds and silvers in the palette. These are going to be perfect if you want to create a bright, soft, fresh, one and done type of look, something very neutral and easy. These are going to be the shades in the palette that I use in the demos to kind of start off the look, to create maybe something softer, to brighten up the inner corner, the center of the eye, or to create a very soft lower lash line. The next set that I have here are all of the pinky nudes. If you're somebody that loves a traditional kind of Charlotte Tilbury pillow talk-esque type of shade, you are in luck. You have your security blanket here. These are really easy to pair together with a lot of those other softer colors that I just showed you in the previous set of swatches. Next up, we have all of the purples in the palette. Some of these look a little bit more lavender, a little bit more violet, and then some of them are more on the bluish side. Note how a lot of these are going to be more medium in tone. Some of them are a little bit more sparkly than others. Others are going to be more of like a satin or metallic. Hopefully you can see some of the subtle differences. However, most of the shades in this palette are not going to be, you know, super chunky and glittery. Next, we have the greens in the palette. I love these soft, mossy, kind of foresty greens. You'll notice one of the ones here as well has kind of like a gold shift to it. So beautiful. And the other one there is a little bit softer. It's more translucent. I really like to use that one as more of a topper. And finally, we have probably the boldest shades in this palette and the ones that I'm wearing on my eyes today. These are all of the blues. We have a beautiful kind of cornflower blue. It's a little bit softer. And then we also have the option of those 2 deep navies in the palette, one of them being a little bit more blue and the other one being slightly more kind of greeny teal. As I mentioned earlier in this video, I am going to take a couple of minutes now before before we get into the demos to just kind of share my thoughts about this palette, the pros, the cons. What are the things that you need to know before you spend $115 on this palette? Don't just run out and get it because it's hyped up, because it's limited edition. I want you guys to really think if this is going to be worth the money. I've been testing this palette out for about a little bit over a week now. I've tested out every single shade. I've created a bunch of different looks. I feel like I have a good feel for this palette. I've used it in my everyday life, for work, going out, hanging out with friends and family, etc. And I must say, I really like it. I think it is beautiful. And many of you all know, if you follow me here on this channel, I don't normally gravitate towards cool tones, but I just really like the mixture of these soft neutral shades that you kind of see right here where I'm pointing, mixed with the pops of color. But there's still pops of color that are easy to work with. I know a lot of us, we kind of get intimidated if we have like a bright orange or like a hot pink or something like that. It's not like that. These remind me of natural pops of colors that we see in nature, and that's kind of what this palette is inspired by. It's a beautiful soft color story with options for making it look a little bit more colorful, making it look a little bit deeper and smokier. And I think you guys will learn a lot from the demos if you are maybe a little bit intimidated by this palette or you don't know how to use all of the colors. I definitely think that this is the best palette that Byredo has ever made. And I feel pretty confident in saying that this is going to be on my best makeup of 2024 list when I do that video at the end of the year. The last palette that they did, the Remembrance palette, also made it onto that list. The formula is equally as good. If you're not familiar with this formula, by the way, I would say it's definitely a very luxurious formula. I also think that it is pretty unique to other brands. I would say probably the closest formula is probably the YSL Mini Couture Clutch palettes, because it has like a little bit of creaminess, but not so much where these are going to be super high shine, foily metallics. It's definitely pigmented. You can build it up a little bit, but it still retains a little bit of softness, the kind of softness that you might get from like a Dior satin, for example. A little bit of creaminess, soft satin, very, very blendable, very easy to work with. The formula is just divine. I think you'll get that when we get into the demos in just a second. If you've never seen any demonstrations with this formula, it's definitely the best formula that Byredo has made. It's lovely. It's a really, really beautiful palette. The packaging is fine. It's not the most travel friendly. It's very bulky and it gets, you know, dirty and whatnot, but that's okay. I will forgive them for this slightly bulky packaging because it is a larger palette. As much as I loved the Remembrance palette, I do think that this one is a lot more interesting than the Remembrance palette. That one had a lot of shades that were kind of duplicative. I feel like that could have been more of like, I don't know, a 9-pan palette. I don't think we needed all of those different neutral tones. Some may disagree with me. I think that this one is a lot more interesting. There's a lot more differentiation between the tones, but you still get some differentiation in the formulas. Some of the colors are a little bit more sparkly than others. Some of them are going to be more of like a soft satin. Some of them are slightly more translucent than others. And then you also have 2 mattes in this palette. And that kind of brings me to what I would change about this palette. There's only 2 matte shades. And I think you can create a lot of really beautiful looks without matte shades. You're going to see me create 3 looks in just a second. But I do kind of wish that maybe they had swapped out a couple of the shades for a few more mattes. You can certainly use these 2 shades if you want to deepen up a look, but I would have loved maybe 1 more mid-tone matte like the 2 that we have right here, and maybe 1 darker matte. If I really want more of like a matte smoke, or if I want to use that as a liner, something like that, I think maybe a dark matte green would have been beautiful. I also think maybe just a nice matte cool tone brown, like a very standard builder shade that you could use with pretty much any look in this palette. So keep that in mind if that's going to annoy you. Maybe you don't want to pick up this palette. So far, it's kind of pushed me a little bit more out of my comfort zone because I'm the kind of person where I like to kind of find that mid-tone matte, and that's how I will start off my look, by just adding that in the crease. But when I don't have that security blanket in a palette, it does kind of push me me to be a little bit more creative, and I guess I do appreciate that. The other thing that I wish that they did with this palette is I wish that they had included some of those very creamy, ultra high shine metallic topper shade. I don't want to call them toppers because they're more pigmented. Topper makes it sound like it's just like a glitter topper, but like those creamy high shine pigmented shades that we saw in the Remembrance palette. You guys know what I'm talking about. They had the silver one and the gold one, and those shades really make the palette, and I think a lot of people really enjoyed that palette because it was very neutral, and then you could kind of go in with one of those two shades to kind of amp it up a little bit, add some contrast, some shine. So beautiful, but they didn't do that in this palette. They don't have any of those shades, and so I was kind of yearning for those. I'm not gonna lie, as much as I love the color stories, the formula, and the finish, I would have liked some of those creamy, high shine, almost special shades to add a little bit more value to this very expensive 18 pan palette. Another missed opportunity, I think, is the inclusion of a beautiful, bright, iridescent topper shade, or maybe two iridescent topper shades. This is a huge trend in the beauty industry right now, or in the luxury beauty industry. We're seeing Chanel, Dior, Guerlain, lots of brands come out with kind of neutral palettes with a pop of color and a beautiful iridescent type of stunner shade. And I feel like that would have been so beautiful in this palette, and I feel like it would have been really on theme. Maybe I'm not understanding the theme, but when I think of mineralscapes, I kind of think of obviously nature, I think of stones, I think of crystals, and I think of the way that the light hits the stones and the crystals and kind of the sparkly effect that you get from that. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more differentiation in kind of the textures that were offered, and given that they aren't including those kind of creamy metallic shades that we saw in the Remembrance palette, I would have liked to have seen that style of topper of special shade in this palette. So I kind of feel like that was a little bit of a missed opportunity as well. And the last thing that I want to mention before we get into the demos is the range of depth that you will get from these tones. You're going to notice that a lot of them are very medium toned in nature. If you are somebody that goes into very light shades very often, and you really don't dip into a lot of medium or even deep shades, I don't know if this palette is going to be worth the money, because you really only have this shade, and this shade right here that are truly going to be like light, soft shades. And for sure, I like to pair those colors with a lot of the other medium shades. You'll see it in the demos to create something that's a little bit lighter for the daytime. But if you're someone that usually just uses one shade, I think you're going to be a little bit limited. Usually, if there's a lot of medium tone shades in a palette, it doesn't bother me because I can kind of take the look either way with the other, companion shades in the palette. But it's just something that I like to mention because a lot of my subscribers, they really only want to use maybe 1, 2, max 3 shades. So hopefully the demos will be a point of inspiration. And then similarly, if you like a look that kind of goes more smoky or more evening, or you like a lot of options for how to smoke out your look, you really don't have many options in this palette. Like, you really only have these two bright kind of navy and teal shades, and both of those shades are kind of similar. Like, I don't think we needed both. I would have enjoyed maybe just this one and then this other one to be like a really deep brown or even a deep green, something deeper than this, because even this shade doesn't add a lot of smoke, if you understand what I'm saying. So a lot of the looks that you're going to get are going to be very medium in tone. Just something to think about, not necessarily a con. It doesn't bother me if I want to go in either direction. I can always dip into other palettes, but if you're spending $115 on this palette, it might bother you. So those are all of my thoughts, friends. Those are the pros and the cons. And with that, I will stop talking and we will get into the 3 looks using this palette. All right, so for this look, I think I'm going to play around with the greens and then some of the neutrals over here on this side of the palette. I'm going to start off with this lighter shade. It's kind of like a pale gold with a little bit of a shift. My recommendation with this palette, if you are a little bit intimidated by some of the colors or maybe some of the darker shades that are in the palette, is to go in with one of these lighter, more neutral, less intimidating shades and kind of just start off with that all over the eye. As you can see, this is perfect if you just wanted to do a really nice light one and done, a nice bright gold across the eye. I'm also going to take that gold gold and put it a little bit here in the inner corner just to kind of brighten everything up. Next, I'm going to go into this lighter cool tone neutral, and I'm going to apply that to the lower lash line. It's kind of just like a nice light pewter sort of color. Now I'm going to layer in a little bit more color. So I'm going to go into the mossy green one here, and this has kind of like a bit of a golden shift. It's a little bit lighter, but still rather medium toned. And I felt like this would pair really, really nicely with that lighter golden shade. See that? It's like a little bit of a duochrome. I don't know if I would want this all over the eye because I feel like you kind of end up losing a little bit of dimension. But when it's melted into the gold shade, I feel like it makes a lot more sense. It's a beautiful color. And I'm using kind of like a fluffy but still a little bit flat brush. This is the Rephr number 1. I believe this is the synthetic version. And I'm just gonna kind of blend that up and into the crease. Because there's not a lot of mattes in this palette, you do have to work with the shimmer shades in the crease. That being said, because they're not super high shine, I still feel like it works. Using a smaller brush, I'm going to start layering in this deeper mossy green. This one doesn't have as much of a shift. I think it works a little bit better here in the outer corner to add a little bit more definition. See, if you're afraid of the colors, like I said, go in first with a color that you're maybe a little bit more comfortable with, and then you can layer in these deeper or more vibrant shades as more of like a pop. So we're still keeping the eye open with those bright neutrals, but then we get this really, really beautiful pop of green. And also, if all else fails, try to stick to the colors in the palette that are a little bit similar. So you can do more of all purples. You could stick to kind of like these cool tone shades here. You could stick to the pinks. You could do blues. You could do greens. So start off with that until you kind of get to know the shades a little bit, because if you start blending, let's say, these greens with these pinks, at least in my experience testing out this palette, it can get a little bit muddy. And I want to get just a little bit more depth from that green shade. There's a lot of medium tone shades in this palette, but not that many that are truly deep other than these two right here. But if you use a brush that has a little bit more density to it and more precision, this is from BK Beauty. This is the N11. It's just like a really great little sort of liner or eyebrow brush. Then you can build up the shades a little bit more on like the lash line and the outer corner. I'm kind of tempted to go into this shade right here because it is the most glittery one in the palette. It is kind of like a nice topper shade. I wouldn't call it a topper shade. You can see it on my hand right here. It does have some opacity to it, but I just love the shine that it gives. And I feel like this tone is gonna contrast. You gotta tap off your brush for this one. It's gonna contrast really nicely with everything else that we have on the eye. Just do a little bit more as like a little cool toned surprise. This would be great if you wanted to do a more smoky look with, let's say, the blues or even this purple. You could do the purple and then this like sparkly pewter topper shade. I feel like that would look really good. But for this look, I'm just gonna tap a little bit there in the center for some extra sparkle. And here we are, friends. This is the final look with the green, light gold, and pewter sparkly shade. Comment down below and let me know what you think. I think it's a really pretty way to wear these sort of like mossy greens, but in a more subtle way. Like I said, if you kind of melt it together with the brighter shades in the palette and you keep the lower lash line still a little bit light, you get this really beautiful daytime look, or maybe like a day to night look. You could absolutely deepen this up and make it look a little bit smokier if you were to take those green shades and just apply them to the lower lash line or add a little bit of eyeliner. So you definitely have some options there, just giving you some ideas for the future if you did pick up this palette or if you plan to. But let me know what you think of this look. I think it's really pretty, and I feel like this is a really good look for the autumn time as well. Let me know what you think. For this next look, I'm going to focus more so on the purples and some of the softer pink colors in this palette. I'm going to start off with this one in the corner. It's a little bit more of like a medium to light cool toned purple. and I'm going to focus that more so on the outer half of the lid. This is one of my favorite shades in the palette. It's so beautiful and soft and cool tone. It's not glittery at all, just has a really beautiful kind of soft metallic shimmer. And this is a very good color if you want to do just a one and done. I try and start off most of these looks with these types of colors so you guys can maybe see a little bit more of what it would look like if you did a very, very simple look with maybe just one or two shades. Then I'm gonna dive into this shade right here, which is a little bit lighter and brighter with a smaller brush. And I'm going to apply that to the inner corner of the eye. Just kind of brightens everything up, opens up the eye, and this is another shade that is just so flattering. I think it's really going to pop on most skin tones because it has this gorgeous kind of metallic gleam, really nice for the inner corner. I do kind of wish they had maybe like a white or something in this palette, something that was a little bit more pearlescent. This is probably the closest you're going to get to it in this palette. I'm also going to apply the soft purple to the lower lash line. Nothing too dark, but just kind of matching what we did on the top to the bottom. If I wanted something super soft, I could just stop the look right here. This could be a really pretty look for day, for work. Again, something very simple. We only used 3 shades, but I am gonna be layering in some of the deeper purples here as well. I'm gonna go into this one right here with a fluffy brush and just add a little bit more dimension to the outer part of the eye. This is just a little bit darker than the other purple shade that we had. So you could see it just looks a little bit more purpley, whereas I would say these other tones, they're more soft, they're more shimmery. They don't really stand out too much as a color. They have like a little bit of taupiness and graisiness to them, whereas once I go into these colors, the look starts to look a little bit more purpley. And actually, if you guys are interested, I did a very similar look to this on my mom in our Mother's Day special. She is 62. Her skin's a little bit different than mine, so if you want to see this look or something very similar on mature skin, I will link that video down below. It's not going to be exactly the same, but more or less I'm using a lot of the same shades, and she has green eyes. Let me tell you, these purple shades, they make her eyes pop. I've never seen her eyes look so green before. I think it looks nice on blue and brown eyes as well, but with green eyes, the purple shades, let me tell you, it looked absolutely gorgeous. So as you can see right here, it just looks a little bit smokier, a little bit more dimension, but I still feel like this looks soft and very wearable and really easy to do. Comment down below, let me know if you agree. Now, out of the 2 mattes in the palette, there is a matte purple. It is this shade right here. It's kind of like a dusty, cool toned, gray-ish purple. Because I have a matte, I am gonna add a little bit there with a more precise brush to kind of add a little bit of depth, and I just really like the tone that this brings out. Next up, I'm gonna layer in a little bit of shimmer, and believe it or not, this shade right here is actually a little bit more of a topper shade. Nothing in here is truly a topper where it's kind of just like glitter and no color, but this one is a great candidate to just sort of layer on in the center of the eye. Gives a little bit of pink there, but also gives a really nice glitter. And I did wet my brush, by the way, I forgot to mention that. I wet my brush, and it's giving just a little bit of glimmer and shine to this look. The last little touch that I'm gonna add to this look is this beautiful, darker, kind of eggplanty purple there on the side. And I did wet my liner brush this time. And we're gonna try this as, I guess, kind of like a liner, a little bit more purple on the outer half here. I am getting a little bit of fallout, so I don't know how much wetting the brush really helped. I see it giving me a little bit more control, so using them wet is a little bit new to me. I also have the BK Beauty smudger brush here. This is the N12, and I want to see what this looks like if I kind of use something a little different. Yeah, I find that these are a little bit easier to work with. You get kind of like a softer application when you don't wet the brush. You do get a little bit of fallout, which I can fix. But take a look at that color. It's such a gorgeous purple. I love it. I love a good purple. So nice. But I am going to kind of wing it out a little bit, and then I'm going to clean up that edge with a little bit of concealer in just a second. So let me go clean this up. I will put on some mascara and I will be right back. All right, friends, and this is the final look using the purpley and pewter tones in the palette. Let me know what you think of this one. These are probably the colors that I've been using the most over the past week as I've been creating looks with this palette, probably because they're a little bit softer. They're the ones that I reach for more so if I want just kind of like a soft and easy look for the daytime, or maybe, you know, for work or Zoom calls or something like that. I don't always have time to go into like the deep navies and the forest greens, and the purple tones are just perfect if you want something like natural, soft, and cool tones. So comment down below. And with that, let's move on to look number 3. All right, I have a fresh face and we are on to look number 3. And I cannot review this palette, friends, without diving into some of the beautiful navy blues. I'm primarily going to be using these 3 shades in the palette. And I'm going to start off with the gold. I love the contrast between gold and pretty much any type of blue. So that's the shade that I'm going to start out with. And I'm going to do kind of like a nice wash of color all over the lid. Once again, this is one of the shades in the palette that would be really good if you just wanted a nice soft look, but it also looks absolutely stunning contrasted with not only the blue, but also I think with these greens, in addition to this one over here. Such a bright, beautiful, sunny gold. Probably my favorite shade in the palette, or at least one of them, one of my most used ones. And I'm also going to just take a little detail brush and I'm going to kind of work that along the lower lash line as well, because once again, I want this to be a little bit brighter right here. This particular look is going to turn out a little bit smokier and maybe more evening. Next up, I'm going into this blue. It's kind of like a cornflower blue, more medium in tone. And I am going to focus that more so on the outer half of the eye. See how nice that shade is and how beautiful it looks up against the gold. So this could also be a look, just the gold and the blue together. You could put on some mascara. You could do maybe like a little winged eyeliner, and that could totally be a look for you. And both of these have kind of like a metallic texture to them, but they don't have any glitter. I'm actually gonna go into the other gold shade here in the opposite corner. I wanna add a little bit of that here in the center because that one is slightly more shiny, a little bit more impactful. And I just love the way it kind of blends both of those other 2 colors together. Add some brightness to the center of the eye. And finally, I'm gonna go into one of the deeper blues. I like this one a little bit better because it kind of reminds me of a marine toned blue. This one is more of a teal, and I don't know, I just like this one a little bit more. It's slightly more pigmented and doesn't have quite as much shimmer. And I mostly like to use it as a liner. You can definitely smoke it out a little bit, but it works so well as a liner. You can kind of see a trend in a lot of my looks today. I'm doing a lot of like shadow liners. Here's what it would look like if you just did it as a liner, but maybe you didn't wing it out or smoke it out or anything like that. I think I'm gonna make this look a little bit more dramatic. I did this look yesterday. We went out to Top Golf. The look was fire. My golf swings were not. But at least my eyeshadow looked good. This brush makes it really easy to just kind of wing it out like that. Even for a day look, you could do just the soft gold and then maybe the blue as a liner. And I don't think this would look as, you know, whoa, she's wearing blue eyeshadow as when you add in the cornflower blue. This blue you do have to be careful with when it comes to fallout, just because it's a darker shade, so make sure you are tapping off your brush a little bit. I'm using this extremely small and precise Rephr number 23 to take that blue, and I like to put a little bit here in the outer corner so that it has kind of more of a like triangular, slightly, I don't know, retro style wing. All right, and this is the final look using the blue tones in the palette. I think that this one might be my favorite. Comment down below and let me know which of the 3 looks was your favorite. I just like the combination of the bright gold and the navy blue, especially for summer. Kind of gives me slightly kind of marine vibes. It's a really beautiful look for kind of going out to dinner, that kind of a thing. But comment down below and let me know, do you think you would wear this look? Do you think you could recreate it? Hopefully I gave you some good ideas on how you can utilize the blue tone tones in this very beautiful palette. This is the final look that I'm going to be doing in this review, but if there are any other colors in the palette that you want me to play around with, let me know in the comments section and maybe I'll do another get ready with me or something like that with this palette. If you like this video, please don't forget to give me a big thumbs up. Leave me a comment down below letting me know all of your thoughts. If you purchased this palette, let us know how you've been getting along with it. Let us know what kinds of looks you've created. Subscribe if you haven't already. And with that, friends, I hope that you see some beauty in your day, and I will see you in my next one. Goodbye.